And welcome back once again to Hot Wheels Hilarity Season 13. So I feel like that with all the given constraints and all the different sorts of ideas that have been lacking, I feel like that the best thing I can do right now is to finalize the season by pretty much ending things off in a trilogy sort of effect. And what I got in mind is, well, a random selection of different Hot Wheels, 3 different collectible theater cups, and of course, myself sitting here. As I simply went ahead and picked out the cars from certain bins of mine in my room, I went on ahead and, well, gathered up as much as I could here. 18 models per cup, so for this trilogy we're expecting to get a good 54 models worth. Now we'll go with the Morbius one, because why not? Either way, what we got here is a number of different models worth overviewing and picking out the ones that I feel like were the best contenders in most of my episodes. Now, while not every model has had itself a chance at HWH Season 13, or a majority of seasons, I have ensured that they made at least one appearance in the whole series. So, essentially, throughout the last 7.5 years since I started this whole thing, altogether, you could say that I'm, for one, looking to have some good success here. So, there it is. We pretty much have a good 18 models here worth checking out. So as I disconnect real quick, what we're going to do here is basically pick out the ones that I feel like were the best of each grouping. So we're going to start things off by talking a bit about this model right here. This one, of course, is known as the Lotus Concept. Yeah, pretty simple for a 2012 model. But what I can tell, this model hasn't had that much to offer, but it does do some pretty decent performance. So I can't exactly consider it masterpiece material for that reason, so unfortunately doesn't always handle that well when it comes to my layouts. And for our next model here, we're going to be taking a look at something that's a bit older. Not exactly by release here, but by year in general. We have the 73 Ford Falcon XB. Pretty much a little while before the Falcon itself got its true peak throughout the 90s. But overall, this one also doesn't have that much to offer in comparison to the likes of most other models I've had. Like I've said, there's been a good amount of contenders, some of which actually do very good. And if I could list a few off the top of my head, well, there's Crazy 8, Bulletproof, and even, wow, who could forget that time when the Bugatti Chiron actually won something? That was unexpected. Aston Martin Vulcan, however, we've had a couple of different appearances over the years, being released a few years ago. Yeah, in 2019, so think about it. I was well into my 3rd season by the time 2019 came around. But overall, ever since it came out, I have given it at least a dozen different appearances. And most of the time, it actually has been quite the thrill to watch. So, I guess for that reason, we'll let it sit here because it's one of the best contenders I can find. Another good contender of mine I got is the Scion FRS, which of course for some reason is painted in the 86 color scheme. Basically a nice sort of bubblegum pink, which I'd say in this instance, it's a good complement. Along with the white accents and the dark gray rims, it gets a lot of style points and really stands out from the crowd because of its colors. But since coming out in 2014, I know that Race Grooves, for instance, hasn't had all that much positive feedback to say about it overall. But I'd say the one I got here for its looks does great enough on the track. And it has done pretty good on some layouts, so I guess I'll keep that around too. Here's a model that I haven't had very good performance from, the 81 Camaro. Yeah, compared to the 73 Camaro, 69 Copo Camaro, or even the 17 Camaro RS, not exactly much to say about this one. Yeah, there's a lot of Camaros out there to choose from anyways. This one, known as Bubble-matic, is kind of more famous for its gimmick of creating bubbles via the bubble wand that you can flare up like this. It doesn't necessarily do all that much performance-wise, and I do feel like it sometimes gets in the way. It might cause jams because of when it gets flared out, like let's say from a loop launcher in Track Builder Unlimited, that sometimes does cause it to become stuck. So, not a great contender on that part. Jeep FC, yeah, kind of a flop. A little too bulky and doesn't quite fit on the track properly. Here we have a former Acceleracers model to follow up with Jackhammer, which in this instance I can at least give it some good credit on the fact that it's one of those models that is popularly known from a TV show. But compared to other models in the Acceleracers line, there are more popular pieces like Reverb, Spectite, Hollowback, Riveted, and Chicane. But still, I do love this one. Gets a lot of style points and also gets a lot of power points because according to its own official bio, it has 500 horsepower, 502 cubic inches, and a V8 engine. That's about all we got to talk about. Also driven by a guy known as Porkchop. So, mostly for those things I would keep it around, but it just doesn't do all that well on the track. Now we're going to move on to the Ford Escort. Yeah, simply put, just a regular Ford Escort. Compared to the Falcon, which was also well known in the 90s, the Escort also has had quite the history. I almost don't really know why they don't bother to bring it back. But at the same time, I can also understand why. It's morely a rally car and not so much as anything else. So, while it does pretty decent on the track, it doesn't do much to slow it down or anything like that. The last couple times I've had it on the show just didn't overall pan out so well. Next we'll have another popular model, Shark Cruiser. Yeah, that's what it is. The name says it all. It looks great, performs not so great, however. So I guess you could say it splits down the middle on that part, but you know what? Not much more reason to talk about it. Here we have Hollowback, which is obviously not Hollowback, because that's a different model. Yeah, this one's kind of the tow truck variety, similar in a way to Toe Jam and other models, but it doesn't have a bendable hook, which kinda defeats the purpose. We know Toe Jam had an opposable hook. Here we have one of the Blings models. Again, there are some more popular picks out there, but the Chevrolet Avalanche, this is pretty much one of the only leading examples of one in Hot Wheels' lineage. But still, being more than 20 years old, it's hard to go wrong when you have yourself a classic such as an Avalanche. Yeah, it's kind of legal enough to call this a classic because of how old it already is. And Blings also do give it some style points. Not quite enough to do so well though. Next we're going to move on to the Maserati Shamal, a model that you might have seen a little while ago actually. Not only because I first introduced it, but it was also because this has been featured on a few different track sets and some competitions, and actually has done fairly well in most ways. I will say there hasn't been much in terms of layouts, so you can't really go that far when you talk about that sort of topic. So, not much more to say on that. Another model that came out a little while ago, the Toyota GR86 Cup. Basically, much like the Scion FRS, in fact, side by side, look at that. You got two different gender colors first off with the blue and pink, so there's that for you. Then of course you have a little more style points because of the spoiler, the Hot Wheels logo, and the number plating for the 86. But essentially, look at that. It's virtually the same sort of car, just with the Scion being a bit more of its own sort of thing. It's true that Scion had some designs taken straight out of Toyota and a few other brands out there, but nonetheless, the 86 Cup just didn't do all that well in comparison. It might get style points and other things, but that's about all we have to say about it. Here's the Hollernator, another one of those cars with gimmicks on them, which as you can see, does allow for you to haul away a vehicle like this. I've had this one for quite a while, if you can't already tell, because of certain cosmetic damages. Like, you can see a couple chips on the side of it, especially up top here. Yeah, it's pretty much what that is. So, had a lot of play with it, had a lot of time spent with it, and I can't say that it does really good on the track for whatever the reason may be. Now, even though we got ourselves 2 contenders here to talk about, let's talk about the other 3 right here. First off, Crazy 8s. Definitely up there with the likes of these 2. It's gotten a lot of good reputation. It's gotten some wins over the years, and I especially am a big fan of the sort of livery and scheme that they chose for this one. It's a mixture of water slide decaling process for the nice black carbon bits on it, as well as the unique die-cast metal with the sort of electrum tint to it. Not to mention a plastic spoiler with the unique Crazy 8 right on it. Yeah, it's got some great decals on it. This version might not exactly be like the Dune Rats variant that was driven by Kadeem from the film, but still, it's already a near perfect model as it is. Here's another model that's pretty excellent, Power Surge. This one was, of course, one of the first colors that had come around with this model, and I'm especially proud to have owned this piece. This one, of course, has a nice mauve and primrose, white and purple sort of scheme to it, so if you want to compete with the Scion FRS, well, you got a little advantage here with some more color variations and a little variety flown in, not to mention stripes. How could you go wrong with that? On top of that, it's got glow-in-the-dark wheels. So, enough said. Then, of course, we have the Jaguar MK1. It's a unique classic that came out way back in the day, but in terms of it being a Hot Wheels model, it had little to offer. So, I unfortunately can't say that much more. So, we have ourselves 4 final contenders. Yeah, I technically do split it down into a series of 4 just so I can reevaluate and find out which one's the best of the bunch. So, to recap, Aston Martin Vulcan has been in my collection for over 6 years since it came out in 2019. This particular one is a unique dark blue with some black all over it, so it doesn't offer that much based on style alone, but the styling of the Vulcan is already pretty incredible. And this kind of race and road car hybrid, since after all, you can drive it on the road if you need to, and there's a special $20,000 steering wheel that allows for it to be used to its full potential on the track. Yeah, no joke. Even when Saab Kyle 04 did a review on the original Aston Martin Vulcan in a showroom building nonetheless, he did point out that the steering wheel alone was a pretty hefty price tag, which you could probably spend on a used car elsewhere. Scion FRS, of course, is also pretty amazing. I do love the unique color palette they chose for this, along with the 86, a unique homage to the Toyota 86, and also it's had some pretty good competition points as it stands as well. Power Surge, of course, also has had plenty of time on the track over the years in HWH history, and like the Scion, it does have a unique ultraviolet color palette to it and glow-in-the-dark wheels, so you could say it goes a notch above the FRS. But I'd say, out of all of which, Crazy 8s. Not only famous in a movie or media in general, as it also appeared on TV and video games. Yeah, no joke about that. Crazy 8s has had that much popularity over the years. Throughout my childhood, and even today, it still resonates with me quite well. This was also a model that I've had for a really long time, but I've only had this model since 2016. So, not exactly as long ago as when I originally got a Crazy 8. It was a little different than this one. So, I guess with that in mind, Crazy 8 appears to have won this whole thing. 17 other cars had some ups as well as downs, but I'm more than happy to have Crazy 8 as a long-standing piece of my own collection. So, that's all I got to say about this one. But I'll be back tomorrow to review the next 2 cups worth of 18 racers each. And we'll just have to see how it rolls. Just like we did for today.